Last time we talked about different HTTP methods and when to use each one of them. We talked about this launch settings.json file. We explained that we have two different servers, IIS Express and this one, which is actually called Castrel. We also made a quick recap about the different files that we have here. We used a tool called Postman to call and test our APIs, and we also created our own post API, which now I realize that we forgot to add this HTTP post decoration here to specify that it's a post request. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to create our database. We're going to use something called Entity Framework that will auto-generate our entities, since we're going to go with the database first approach, and it will also generate a DbContext class that we're going to be using to access our tables in the database. So this time our APIs will be actually sending data to the database, saving them there, and it will be getting data from a database and not just like we already did last time. I'm going to be using Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So here, let's open this, right click, new database. I'm going to call it PersonDB or Person Database. Now let's open this, let's go to tables and let's create a new table. We have our ID, which is of type integer. We have, let's say, a first name. Let's give it a type of varchar 100. By the way, I'm not gonna go with this convention, I'm gonna go with this one actually. We have a last name. Let's give it a varchar of 100 as well. We have an address. We usually have another table for the addresses, since one person can have one to multiple addresses, so it needs to be in a different one, but for the sake of this example I'm going to go with one only, and let's go with phone number. This is going to be varchar, let's say 1000, and for the phone number let's give it a varchar as well, since it can have many formats, and let's say date of birth. And let's go with date. Now this is gonna be our primary key, so right click and set primary key. Also let's come here and find identity specification and set this one to yes. That way the database, Microsoft SQL will be automatically incrementing our ID. We don't have to specify it. And let's call this table person. I'm gonna keep it easy. We're gonna make a CRUD operation actually, CRUD operations. Now what we need to do is install Entity Framework. So let's go to Web Application, right click. Let's go to Manage NuGet Packages. In browse, we need to type in Entity Framework SQL Server. We're gonna pick this one, Microsoft Entity Framework Core. By the way, I'm not using .NET 5, I'm using .NET Core 3.1. If we double click on this, I'm using .NET Core 3.1, not the newest one, which is 5. For that reason, I'm gonna be picking the version 3.1. I'm gonna go with this one. Okay, I accept. Now we need to install Microsoft.EntityFrameWorkCore.SqlServer. Also, let's pick the version that we're using. If you're using .NET 5, go ahead and pick this one. But if you're like me using 3.1, pick this version. And now again, we also need Entity Framework tools. Let's pick this one, Microsoft.EntityFrameWorkCore.tools. Again, let's pick the right version, whichever version you have, and let's install. Okay, I accept. Now if we take a look at our dependencies, in packages we have the 3 packages that we just installed and we're going to be using. The first thing we need to do is go to tools and choose connect to a database. Now here we need to refresh and we need to find the server name. Okay, I have this server name. Now we need to select the database name, which is person database. We just created this one. And let's test the connection. Succeeded, everything is good. Okay. Now if we open the Server Explorer, which by the way, if you don't have, you can go to View and enable it here. As you can see, we can see this green icon that we're connected to this database. If we look here, we have this panel. If you don't have it, you can right click and press on properties. What we need to take is this connection string value. So let's take all this, copy paste, and let's go to appSettings.json, and we need to add this in a new variable which is called connection strings. Which, by the way, if you remember, when I explained this appSettings.json file, I said you have the configurations, connection strings, and all of that. Let's paste whatever we copied, which is the actual connection string. And by the way, let's go ahead and do that. I'll take this, put it here, and give it another variable since we might have different connection strings. So I'm gonna call this one person database, and I'm gonna save. Now what we need to do is write a command which will take this connection string. We will actually use the connection string to transform this database here, which is only one table now, but if you had more, it would take all of them tables and automatically transform them into models and objects that you can use. This is the scaffold method that we're going to be using. Let's take that and copy it. Now here I'm gonna go to tools and open NuGet package manager console. I'm gonna paste this one, and here inside, instead of connection string in quotations, we're gonna take this and paste it here, but we need to remove the second backslash. And here we need to put the database name, so person, okay, person DbContext. Now if we press enter, it will start building, and as you can see, it generated this folder here which is called repository, because we gave it this name, by the way, here, repository. And inside of this, if we open it up, we can see that we have a folder called models with person inside of it. If you take a look here, we have a table called person which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties. If we take a look here, we have them all. They were auto-generated by the scaffold command using Entity Framework. And if we take a look here, we have this person DbContext class auto-generated as well. By the way, here we have errors because we have another person class, which is this one. I'm gonna remove it for now. Okay, if you go back here, everything is fine. Now I want to show you something quickly in our APIs, in our controllers. By the way, let me just change this name now. Let's call it person controller. Yes. Now as you can see, it's person controller. And instead of this one, I'm gonna delete. We don't need it now. And now in our controller, instead of just returning this, and now I'm gonna be using a good convention, so let's call it get all persons. Now here what we can do is var db equal new. If you take a look here, this is person db context, so let's take this name, the class name, and create a new instance. If I didn't find it, we can click here. And now if we take a look, db dot person dot, we can add, we can remove all of those instead of writing queries, because we're using entity framework, so it supports link. So now what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna add a new row here for person. So let's refresh. Now here, right click, edit. Let's go with we don't need to specify the ID because we already enabled the tool that will auto increment it. So here let's go with John. Okay, now we have one person here. Now here, instead of string, we need to return a list of people, so list of type person. If it doesn't find it, we also need to use it. And now here, let's create our list. Or actually, we don't even need to create our list. We can do return db.person.toList. Now if we save that, we have an error. Let's check. Okay, I'm gonna comment this out for now. If we run this and go to Postman, by the way, remember we have the controller name here, so instead of weather forecast we have person now. Since it's person controller, we look at the prefix person slash, and if we take a look here at the route, which it's better if we add one here as well, I'm gonna call it get persons, and I'm gonna rerun this. Now if we come here, slash person slash get persons, and this is a get request, we don't have a body. If I send a request, as you can see, it has retrieved this person, John Doe from California, from our database. If we had more people, obviously it would add more, so I'm gonna go ahead and add more people. Okay, now I added a few more people. If we send the request again, as you can see, it will fetch a list of people. In real applications, we have more than one, so more than one get API. We have one that fetches everything. We have one that fetches by ID. So here I'm gonna have person. Here we're gonna have a parameter, a query parameter that, like we have seen earlier in the previous episode. I'm gonna take those two. It's an HTTP GET method. I'm gonna say get person, and here instead of this, what we need to return is a person based on this ID. But we're gonna handle an error. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say person p equal new person, and now I'm gonna say p equal, have this, so p equal db dot person dot first or default. This one will return null if it doesn't find the actual person. And now what we're gonna do is x dot id equal id. If p equal null, we're gonna return or let's throw an error for now, throw an exception, throw new exception, not found. Also next time we're gonna see what we should return here instead of person. We're gonna be actually returning something called action result. We're going to talk about this in the next episode. And if it doesn't throw this, then surely we have found the person and we need to return it. Now if we run that, if we go back to Postman, I'm going to create a new request. Instead of get persons, it's get person, and it's going to have a parameter, a query parameter. You can either add it here or here directly. We have a person of ID 1, which is John. If you send this request, as you can see, we fetched John. Let's go for 4, for example. And as you can see, it fetched the person with ID 4. If you try to go with an ID that doesn't exist, as you can see, it will be caught here. If you continue, it threw the exception saying not found. Next time we'll see how to handle it, actually, what to return instead of this. And we will see how we should layer our application to have 3 different layers: controller, business logic layer, and data access layer. So next time we'll see how to handle this. We're not going to be throwing an exception, but we're going to be returning something else, like I said, action result. And in the next video we're going to see the different layers and we're going to talk about them. But first, now let's go ahead and uncomment this. Let's say post person. This is an HTTP post method, and here I'm gonna call it post person just to have the same name as here, but remember we can have any name, it doesn't matter. And from the body we're gonna receive a person, and what we do here, again, let's take this and we can do db.add p and then db.save changes, and this is important here. We need to save the changes. Now if we run this and go back to Postman, let's take this, it's a post API. Instead of get person we have post person. Again, this is not case sensitive, so you can type it like this. And here, since a post request, we need to go to the body, raw and JSON, and we need to fill in those information: ID, first name, last name, address, phone number, and date of birth. Okay, so I've created this person. Also notice I didn't add the ID because in the database we already enabled the feature that will auto increment and create the ID automatically, but we could have said ID 0, for example, or we could have given it an ID, but it will take care of it anyways. So now if I press send and go back to here, and as you can see, Elliot Carlson. So now if I send this request, if you scroll all the way down, we can see that we indeed created a new one. Let's try another one, for example, just to see how it is working. So send again. As you can see, it directly added this one. And if we go back to our database and select our top 100, as you can see, it has added our 2 new people. So this was a get, this was a post. Now let's try a delete request. I'm gonna take this, paste it here. Instead of post person, I'm gonna say delete person, and this is an HTTP delete method, not a post. I'm gonna call it delete person, and here I'm gonna give it a parameter which is integer ID. And now what we can do here is I'm gonna take this one here. I'm gonna return this if we do not find the person that we're trying to delete, and if we do find him, by the way, I need to create that person p equal new person. If we do find him, what we need to do is db.person.remove p. So now if this person already exists, we need to remove it, and do not forget db.save changes. Now if we run this, first I'm gonna call the get API. Let's try to remove person of ID 1. So I'm gonna take this, copy it, paste it here, change the request type to delete, and here instead of get person we have delete person, and we have a query param, since here we added this integer ID, so we need to pass in a parameter ID. Let's go with 1 since we're removing person 1. Now if we send this, it returns status code OK. To be sure that it's working fine, let's go with send. As you can see, there's no more John here. This is gonna be it for this video. If it helped you, please leave a like and subscribe, it will mean a lot. In the next video, as I said, we will see how we can layer our application in 3 different layers: business logic layer, data access layer, and this one, which is the controller, will only handle the calls to the function that will be in the business logic layer. And we're also gonna be using the auto mapper that Microsoft created, because we're not gonna be sending this to the users anymore. This entity class will not be sent to the user anymore. Instead, we're gonna create another model class which we will be sending, and I will explain why in the next video. So stay tuned, and thank you for watching.